These will be recorded, just now, regardless. So if you can't make it, no worries. If you're watching this after the fact, no worries. Obviously, better if people can come and ask questions, but we pretty much cover the same content. The only difference is questions. So, anyways, welcome to CIT225. Spring semester, gonna be a good one. As long as we all don't flood. I know that's a problem everywhere. So, anyways, welcome to CIT225. This first week, I like to kind of just go over the basic structure of the course, and kind of give you a brief intro into kind of hopefully what we're going to learn and kind of the way the course is structured. Week one is really light, meaning that light in the sense that as far as like the learning curve, it's really not that steep. It basically what we'll do this week is kind of get set up. That's the main goal this week, is just to make sure we have our tools set up, and that we have things that we need to get started. And I know that many of you have taken CIT 111, and may actually already have things installed. So that's perfect. But yeah, so let's just dive right in. So as far as like some general housekeeping, in the course, what I like to do is kind of treat it just like I would work. And so, if you're going to turn in something late, if you're going to miss a deadline, I get life happens. That's part of the reason why we're, taking part in these online courses. All I ask is that, we keep a level of professionalism. Just let me know in advance. As much as you can. And I get sometimes things happen. I don't expect you to, stop rushing a spouse to the emergency room, to let me know that it's going to be late. I get things happen. Um, you know, just communicate those things. And my biggest, my one rule is I just want you to succeed in the class. And I know that the more behind you get, the more likely you are to not succeed. So obviously the deadlines are important, but I also understand life happens. I would just say don't be chronic about it, and it should be good. Um, the books included in the course, a lot of everything's kind of roped into the course, so nothing too crazy needed. Like I said, we'll just have to download a couple things. But anyways, as far as the course, each week we kind of have really a couple things, and I'm actually going to kind of skip up here to week 2 because that's where we kind of get into the normal flow. So each week, really, you have 3 things. You have an exercise, a quiz, and then like a paper or a project. So really just 3 assignments per week. The exercises are just kind of like questions. Like it'll ask you to do something. Most of the time you write a little bit of code. It's kind of like a quiz, but their exercises more than a quiz. And they're graded as such. So obviously, it's pretty easy to tell like a good attempt versus a bad attempt. So we grade based on attempt, and we'll try to correct that, let you know like, oh, where you might have gone wrong, those kinds of things. So the exercises truly are exercises. The quizzes are just exactly that. They're quizzes. And then each week you'll kind of have a paper. There's a couple caveats to that, couple weeks where we don't. But like, for example, week 2, it'll be a little bit different assignment. But like week 1, we have a paper. And in week 1, that paper is to, they kind of give you like a case study, and you kind of write a paper about it. And I really like these. They are a lot more open-ended. Like they kind of give you direction. So I kind of treat these, and I'll show you an example paper, but I kind of would use these papers as a way to kind of guide your studies almost, or I would, coming into a week, I would make sure I know what the paper's about, because you may be able to use some of your own kind of exploration to support your paper. So for example, this week's paper is to kind of explain the difference, the pros and cons between using the command line and an IDE. And the IDE just stands for Integrated Development Environment. We've all used them. if you've written a programming language, odds are you've used an IDE before, because the only alternative is like command line. So anyways, it in the reading this week and kind of in installing it, we can kind of go through those two options, and largely just kind of using that to kind of guide some some direction into like maybe what you want to use. There is no right or wrong answer. Um, just largely kind of what you want. And like I said, I would know what that is, because then that way as you're installing MySQL and trying a couple things out, you can try both kind of methods to connect to MySQL. So this is a sample paper that I wrote as if I were doing it. Um, and in this case, like they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words. I really like to see either code or screenshots in the papers. It really fleshes them out. It goes a long ways. And it also helps me see you're engaging in the content, which is really the whole purpose of these papers. And that's why I say I would just kind of do it along with, as look what is the paper's about each week. And then as you go through the chapter, as you try things with the chapter, I would let that kind of guide your what you try on your own, and make sure to screenshot it, make sure to save code, those kinds of things. So anyway, this is my paper. And I don't want to like read it word for word, just so that way you kind of have your own thing, but you can kind of get an idea for the amount of content. I have about 4 paragraphs, nice and easy, just kind of summing up my opinion on the matter. And then I try to show, like, I take a couple screenshots just to kind of back things up. They don't have to be in any particular format, anything like that. I've had people do them in HTML. I've had people do blog posts. I've had people do whatever. You can format doesn't matter as long as I'm able to read it. So yeah, my one kind of piece of advice here is just use the code and screenshots or whatever to support your claims. Like if you're going to say that the graphical user interface is better than the command line, take a screenshot, show me, kind of a thing. And that'll go on and on as we go week to week. It'll ask you to explain like certain concepts, like try them out and take some screenshots. But that's kind of what I'm expecting. I'm four full paragraphs of good content, and some screenshots, riddled here and there in between, just about like this. So that's the paper. We've kind of already talked a little bit about the quizzes and exercises, so I'm not going to go over those too in depth. And that's pretty much it. That every week, that's what there's going to be. Like I said, there's a few weeks that deviate, but yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not too bad at all. In the course, so each week kind of follows that same kind of structure, and then at the end of the course, there's two final options. One is just your traditional exam, and then we have another option where you can choose to do a project. And if you choose to do the project, we actually start those in week 3. And those projects are something that you'll want to kind of do. It's actually not a lot of work. I've had a lot of students that do them at the end. I would not use that as an excuse to procrastinate, though, because it is significantly easier to do it throughout the course. So once we hit a certain week, you'll start seeing those updates in my announcements, where I try to tell you like where we should be, and we'll cover those. But the reason I bring it up now is just so you can be thinking about it, because what the final project is you design a database and you actually build it. So I've had students do all sorts of things. Someone last term just did one where they were helping the temple grounds with planting, and so they built a database that would help them kind of track the plants that they had in their inventory, and things like that. So anyways, lots of cool things you can do. It's just a database. It's not like you have to build the whole app. But we kind of build the database as if we were going to build the app. It's a lot of fun. everyone who does the final project says like they learn tons from it. And as long as you have everything you need for the final project, it's pretty much guaranteed 100% on the final. So you don't need to do both. You choose one or the other. You choose the final exam or you choose the final project. Yeah, and so I mentioned that just so you can be thinking about, if there's maybe something that interests you that maybe you can do. But anyways, that's kind of the course housekeeping. I try to keep it pretty simple. If you ever have any problems, just feel free to reach out. From there, though, what I'd like to do is actually kind of just dive into the content here for a little bit. So basically in the course we use, and this may be redundant for some of you who may took CIT111, but I like to cover it just in case someone hasn't heard it, and also just to make sure that it's clear for everyone. Maybe things just didn't quite click in 111. So anyways, in this class we're gonna learn MySQL, and there's lots of different variants of SQL language. SQL is by far the most widely used database language out there. There's a few others that like programmers using little niche kind of applications, but SQL is the big data language. And like I said, there's lots of different variants. They're all the same. So you learn one and you kind of learn them all. The only difference is there's different people who make different database products. They all use SQL. They just have their own little like kind of twist on them, so to speak. So it's not even as different as like Python versus JavaScript. They are very much the same language. They just have like different functions and little minute differences here and there. So like I said, we're going to be using MySQL. MySQL is maintained by Oracle. It's the free open source. It was built by the community. Oracle just maintains it. Oracle also offers their paid version, which is Oracle database, also uses SQL. And so anyways, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, as you can imagine. And so MySQL tends to be a little bit light on the features versus some of the others, but it is widely used. If you've ever heard of WordPress uses MySQL. Tons of things use MySQL, so it's definitely nothing to shy away from. And like I said, you learn one, excuse me, you kind of learn them all. There's a couple others out there. So Microsoft SQL Server is another one. As you can imagine, that's Microsoft's version. And then there's also another one called Postgres. And Postgres is a free open source version that people say is the equivalent to the bigger ones. It's very feature rich, very advanced. It's actually my kind of choice database when I go to do something, because one, it's free. Because like SQL Server and Oracle, those you have to pay for. MySQL and Postgres, they're both free, so they're really handy. But just let's say you get out of college, you get your degree, and you're like, oh man, I really like working with data. If someone says, oh, we use Microsoft SQL Server, you don't need to shy away, because the SQL is the same. Like you can say, oh, I've never worked with SQL Server, but I know MySQL. No one's going to care. They're just going to test you on SQL in general. Nothing super specific to the product. Pretty widely known in the industry. You can jump from one to the other with ease. So no worries there. So anyways, that's kind of just a little bit about what it is. So now to kind of dive into this week's content, what we're going to do is you're going to install a couple things, unless you already have them installed. So, and I just like to clarify this because a lot of people get kind of mixed up here. So you're going to install MySQL. And what MySQL is it's actually the database that runs on your computer. Most of the time, these databases are running on servers, and you just connect to them. Well, in this case, just, in a lot of development kind of places do this, and even myself, you'll install MySQL locally on your computers so it's running in the background, just like a server. So MySQL is not like your traditional application. It's not like Firefox. It's not like, Visual Studio Code. It is a service that runs in the background on your computer. So we can kind of showcase this just a little bit. Like I can pop open a new one here. Um, and I can actually see the status of my server, sudo service MySQL status. Let's try this. So like there's MySQL server. It's literally called the MySQL community server. It's running in the background on my computer. So when you install MySQL and you get it running, just know that it really doesn't do anything for you up front. It's something that's running in the background on your computer. It is a service. It's an application that runs in the background, and then we just interact with it. Now, there's a lot of different ways to interact with the database, and this is where we're going to get into the content of this week's paper. So one of the ways is you can install an IDE that has what is called a GUI, a graphical user interface. And in this case, what we install in this class is called MySQL Workbench. So Workbench is actually the application that we kind of use to interact with the database. Now, what's important to remember is that this does not actually run the database. We just use this to connect to any number of databases. So we could connect to 50 different databases, all using Workbench. In this case, we're going to connect to the one that's running here locally on our computer. But we just kind of connect to it, and then we can interact with that system. The other way you can do it is through the command line. Now the command line, I can connect like this. So MySQL -u root, or let's do -p. So now I'm connected to the database here on my command line. And again, this is actually still just an additional application. This isn't even really part of the MySQL server. We use an actual command line utility called MySQL that is just another application that it uses just to talk back and forth with the database. Because I could have this installed on my computer, and I could actually connect to a server online with this, and they're kind of two separate things. So anyways, just to kind of walk you through this. So I just connected, and I guess as a little bit of a nuance, I'm on Linux. And so this is a little bit easier for me than it will be for those of you on Windows and Mac. So I can just type the command. There's a way you can make it work on Windows and Mac, but the easiest way to get to the command line, no matter what operating system you're on, is actually through the Workbench. So once you follow the instructions to connect to the Workbench, or to connect Workbench to your local database instance, it'll be in a little box like this, and we can right click on this and actually say start command line client. And this is actually going to open up a terminal for me, command prompt for those of you on Windows, terminal on Mac, and then you can just type in your password that you set when you install. And I guess I did the wrong password. There we go. I just made my password School Rocks, just so you're going to want to remember your password that you set up. When you install it, it'll ask you to set a password. Make sure you do something that you can remember easily. But anyways, once we do that, we're connected. And then on the GUI, we just click on it. And again, when you hear me say GUI, just know that we're talking about the user interface, the graphical user interface. All right. And once you get in here, there should be a database called Sequila. So I'm going to kind of do this back and forth so you can see that they're literally doing the same thing We're just doing it in a different way. So you should have a Sequila database in here. We can see this one right here. I'm going to set this one as the default schema. Anyways, there's our Sequila database. And you can kind of see over here. And if you don't see this, you can click right here and you might see like administration or something. You click these little arrows. Schemas is just the name of like all the databases we have. So you should have a Sequila one there as long as you check the boxes. Make sure when you install, there's an option to check the box to install Sequila. If you miss it, no worries. Just let me know. We can get you set up. But once we're in here, we can see all of our databases, and I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to say show databases, and we can see the same thing, right? We have the family cookbook, information schema, MySQL. We actually have a couple extras here, and then you'll notice we have Sequila down here. So what a database is just a collection of tables and other objects. We'll get more into the nitty gritty in the future, but we've all worked with spreadsheets before. We all know how those work. Well, a database is just a bunch of those spreadsheets. The only difference is in spreadsheets, we tend to work kind of like all over the place. In databases, our tables are very structured, and we actually build them the way we want. So how in sheets in Excel or Google Sheets, we have our columns up at the top, and those are the letters, and then you have the rows down the left, and those are your numbers that you can use to identify individual cells. Well, this works the exact same way, except for instead of the letters and numbers, we define what the columns are, and we can just add rows to it. And the numbers on the left, we define that as well. It's called a primary key. And that's kind of what's used to uniquely identify each row on the table. And the other big difference is we use these tables to connect to each other. So that way, we can relate a lot of data. You'll hear the term in the book. It's called a relational database, and it's that because it's a bunch of tables that all have relations to each other, meaning that this one connects to this table and all that kind of fun stuff. So we'll get into it. I don't want to overwhelm you today, so we're just going to kind of walk through it. So the first step in navigating a database is examining what data is available to us. What tables are there? Because most of the tables should have names that make sense. So if we come in here in the graphical user interface or in Workbench, we can click here on this tables and see these tables here. And, we can see some interesting stuff already. Actor, film, that kind of stuff. So you can kind of see this store. So you can kind of get a guess of what kind of data is in there. Now let's do the same thing here. So, we clicked that and went down. So the equivalent in the command line is to say use Sequila. And you can see it's a database changed. And then I'm going to say show tables. And we actually get the exact same list again of all of our tables that are in this database. So now let's say that I want to go one step further, and I kind of want to start, like I said, exploring the data in here. So in the IDE, I can just use my mouse, put my cursor here. I'm going to say select everything from, let's do customer. So I'm going to run that. And there we go. So you'll notice that there's two buttons up here that have lightning on them. This one runs the entire code that you have typed on this page. This one runs just what your cursor's under. So I usually just use the cursor one, and because I'll make like a bunch of queries is what they're called. So once we run this, we can see a bunch of data in here. We can see like first name, last name, email, the store, customer ID, some stuff like that. So now I'm going to go back over here to my terminal, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Select everything from customer. and you'll notice that we get a lot of the same stuff, right? This one just prints it all out to the terminal. All right, so that's pretty much it. So we've connected to the database in both places. We've kind of seen what tables are there, and we can even see what data is in each table. And so really that's about the extent of where we should get to this week. I mean, feel free to explore more. I would expect you to explore a little bit more, poke around a little bit. But really, if you can get to this point, like we're golden. That's what this week is about, is making sure we can connect, we can see the data, getting set up, and then exploring like what's the difference. Like we did it in both places. Are there any pros and cons? Maybe you'll have to research a little bit. In this world of AI, maybe it's worth asking the AI, like what are some common opinions on the difference between using a tool like Workbench and just connecting to the database via the command line. So anyways, and like I said, in this world of AI, that's why I say the screenshots are vital. So make sure you're using those screenshots. Try things, because I mean that's the way you're going to learn. Just like what we did here. As you're going through the week, try to connect on both. Give it a shot. Take a screenshot. Like if I was going to write my paper, like maybe I have the opinion that, hey, this is easier, because I can just click a button instead of having to type things. You can just take a screenshot, those kinds of things. So anyways, any questions? That's pretty much the bulk of the week. It's all about getting set up. So not a ton of, and I don't want to overwhelm week one. So we're going to hit next week hard with starting to kind of talk about some of these concepts. So anyways, any questions about the setup, getting into the system, or just general class structure? All right, I'm going to take that as a green light. Well, anyways, that's all I have for this week. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, let me know. Otherwise, have a great week. Let me know if I can do anything to help you. If you get stuck, don't fight it for too long. Just reach out. Happy to help. Most of the time we can get you squared up away really fast. So anyways, have a good week. Yeah, let me know if anything comes up, and otherwise we'll see you next week.